Welcome to CMOs Without Borders.
I'm Joel Crampton. I help financial advisors, RIAs, and wealth managers replace scattered marketing with strategic systems that boost AUM and production volume.
I'm Mandy McPhee. I am a fractional chief marketing officer and work with founders who are doing too much and need someone to turn their scattered marketing into a system that actually drives results.
Hi, Joel. Episode 9. Isn't this exciting? We're getting to the double digits soon.
This is going to be almost at the end of our first season, and then we'll start 2026 with season 2.
Yeah, season 2. Oh, that's so exciting.
Yeah.
Today, we're really excited to talk to Glenn LaCoste, who is the founder, researcher, and owner of Surviscor Group, who does client experience research for financial institutions, online brokerages, digital banks in Canada. Today, we're going to talk about how the client experience is the credibility engine of financial services. It determines trust, retention, long-term growth, long before marketing even enters the picture at times. Surviscor has spent over 2 decades studying how the client experience impacts financial brands. So we're really excited to have Glenn on board today. Welcome, Glenn.
Thanks for having me.
Do you want to tell us a little bit about Surviscor before we get started?
Yeah, Surviscor is, we've been around for, like you said, about 20 years, a little over 20 now. Came from different brands, but really the premise of starting the business was back in the day, it wasn't really consumer facing, it was business facing to help firms with this new internet delivery systems, let's call it. So it was about even things like how fast your site loaded back in the day, and were you too picture heavy? All these things that came into an experience back then of trying to get people onto this so-called internet phase. It's kind of grown into as we've kind of gone from maybe a 300 question kind of look at things, because it was easy before. Do you have bill payment or you don't have a bill payment for a bank? Some of them, the answer was no, we don't have one. They may have one thing or not the other, or third-party transfers, let's say, if something as simple as that. So we started to evolve with, try to, as you want to say today, be fluid, start to evolve into, okay, now how do we capture an experience from 2 angles? So placing a trade. Well, who places a trade better? Everybody just says, yeah, it's a button, place a trade. So yeah, that's kind of how we started off. Like I said, it was more B2B kind of thing, helping these firms define better ways, from our opinion, of how to do things. And then it became a little bit more as we learned from a consumer using our site, going in, what they're looking for, what kind of results they look at. You start to define that, wow, we're really speaking to consumers in the hopes that the businesses are listening to make every business be better for their individual consumer. So that's kind of what the premise of the business still is. It's about calling people out, I guess. It sometimes comes off as a negative way, but it really isn't meant to be. It's trying to be like, look, we have lots of options, and holding these firms accountable to their options, and not just assuming that, well, we're a credit union, our client's pretty sticky, or we're a big bank, client's pretty sticky. Bottom line is, everybody, no matter who they pick as their financial services partner, that's a pretty big decision, and these firms need to be held accountable to what they're delivering to each individual person that does business with them. So that's kind of what we are, I guess, a little bit of a disruptor in a way. But really the goal is that each one of us on this call, each one of us gets the absolute best that every firm we deal with can put forward. And it's very obvious through rankings who's not putting that foot forward.
The way I look at Surviscor and what you do, you're really an advocate for the consumer.
Agree. We don't get.
Yeah. So you told us, a little bit about Surviscor. How do you define the client experience, and what actually shapes the client experience?
We look at it as task. I think the internet looks at it as, in the past, doing you've asked me this question before, and it's always like, okay, what are the kids learning in school today? Because that's kind of what it's
Mhm.
really developing, and it's I think in the internet, if you look and you use some AI, it'll always say it's a sum of all the tasks that it could be, right? It could be your product, could be part of the client experience, obviously. So is it a strong product, not a strong product? Obviously, customer interaction. So that could be a customer service, we would call it in our days. That could be in person, could be not in person, could be dealing through email, dealing through whichever facility in today's virtual agents world. And the last part would be the actual, today it's the delivery system. What is that delivery system? So the
Mhm.
customer experience today, there's delivery systems of internet, well, let's call it online features, which we would call desktop. You have mobile features, you have in-branch features, you may have internet and mobile in-branch within the branch features, things that they've set up at kiosks or investor centers in the terms of brokerage. So I guess it's not wrong in saying it's a sum of all these parts. I think too much, and you've read some of our stuff. I mean, we pick on customer experience client experience because we just feel like everybody speaks that that's what they're trying to deliver, but I think they really do focus way too much on their digital platforms. It goes well beyond that. And it really is an
Mhm.
all-encompassing feature, and, the younger generation, maybe they wanna do that. I think as they get into their early 30s and own their first home and that, all of a sudden they respect a little bit more that face-to-face that they didn't really want for a while. Now they wanna go in and talk about a mortgage or things like that, and then the older generation is really still likes a little bit more of the pick up the phone or, anything a little bit more personal, I guess. So to us, it's not an easy answer, a long way of saying that, but it's always it changes by firm what that means. And unfortunately, I feel like the industry in financial services, in many ways, is it's defined by digital experiences, which we don't feel that's you know, I guess an all-encompassing version of it.
Yeah, let's dive a little bit deeper there because you're right. I think people are looking to build relationships, build trust face to face, over the phone, in person, and not so much from a digital perspective anymore. Joel and I talk a lot about building trust in financial services and how important it is to build trust. When you think about how to build trust and what that means from an experience perspective, Glenn, talk a little bit more about the importance of that face-to-face or one-to-one communication method.
Well, let's bring it back to it's really task oriented, right? Like everything's about a task. So do we show up at the branch or anywhere in front of somebody and say, "Hey, I'm just here to tell you how awesome you're doing." It's really good. Like, we go when we have problems. We go when we have maybe elaborate questions or we feel they're elaborate, or we just can't do what we want to do digitally. Our first thing today, and everybody should follow that rule, is that you should check digitally first today. There's so many ways of doing that you don't have to leave the confines of your phone, your desktop, your house, whichever way you want to put it. But what happens is somewhere along the way there's gonna be a divergence of, you're going down that path and all of a sudden you've hit the fork in the road and you don't know where to go. So at that point, this client experience becomes very, very important because now I need a solution. I have a task that I started. I could have been, I just want to find out how to open another account at a
Mhm.
bank, credit union. It could be as simple as that. It could be that I don't know how to change my PIN because I've got a new card and you've told me to activate it and I don't feel comfortable. So I go to the branch to do it. No different than returning Amazon returns these days. Do you go to do you have somebody come to your house? Do you go there? Again, they're all based on tasks, right? It's a task we want to achieve. If we want to pay a bill and we have a problem, we're looking for help. If we're placing a trade and we have a problem, we're looking for help. It's all around the one task. It's a sum of the individual tasks that really makes up the experience. And I'm
Yeah.
sure some of the tasks are never questioned, they're just done.
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
Glenn, can you take us through how you measure client experience improvements? And you say you start with, you mentioned 300 questions, but how do you determine that baseline for clients or customers or whatever term. That's another thing I was going to ask you about is you go back and forth between, and I do too, between clients and customers. And
Yes.
but anyway, I was trying to figure out how you determine kind of that baseline when you're first starting to work with companies, and then how do you measure improvements, and what does that look like, and how do you report that to the executive leadership team?
Yeah, you bring up a really great point about client versus customer. Because it's client experience is the coined phrase, but when we write reports, it's usually talk about customers, or in the case of when you're writing a report for credit union, you call them members, right? It's again, is it important what the word is? No, but you have to speak to where they want to speak. First off, we should tell you, it's service scores reviews are not based upon actual consumer studies, let's say. So we don't go out and ask 1,000 consumers what they think about this firm, that firm, etc. This is all internal stuff that we do, taking what we would consider best practices and building a scorecard or a set of questions for that best practice. Where the differentiation comes is what we talked about earlier. It's, a bill payment is a bill payment. Yes, a bill payment's a bill payment. An interact transfer is an interact transfer, not even something that financial services actually control. It's interact that controls it. But the financial services are able to pay up to have it done right away, or in the case of a lot of credit unions, they use the 30-minute delay. So, and the reason I'm bringing that up is that's how we try to ask questions. So our goal is to have binary questions. And I laugh when I say that, I guess, because in history it was yes, no. Do they have one of these? Do they allow you to, so let's just get through like a bill payment. Do they give you your current balance when you start the process? Do they allow you to add one during the process, somebody that wasn't listed, or do you have to get out of it and come back in? So it's all about getting to that nirvana of what's the easiest way to do one of these by asking very yes, no questions. And so what it comes down to is it really functionality is always questioned, but it's the features surrounding it that make what we consider a better experience. So if you add functionality and you don't have features with it, and that could be something like in brokerage, it could be something as simple as why did I have to ask for a quote when I put TD as a symbol in the buy button? Why did I have to ask for one? Just give it to me. I need that in that experience. So that's what we're trying to gauge through these binary questions. And now now we would even go further, Joel, by saying we ask for about 300 or 400 criteria. And a criteria could be a bill payment would be what kind of bill payments do they allow? And when it comes to banking, that could be as simple as, do they allow post dated? Do they allow future dated? Do they allow recurring? All these kind of things that come into a bill payment possibility. Then you would dive into each one of those. Well, how many frequencies do they allow? If you're allowed a frequency, do they allow you to pick the frequency? Do they allow you to skip a payment? So that's the level of detail. We're trying to go into every permutation combination of what possibly could go through a consumer's brain or task pattern when they're doing it, to make it as easy as possible. And the only way of doing that is to really, I think what we do best more than anybody else is that our group focuses on tasks, and we focus on differentiations between firms by the tasks and the features. So, if de facto, if they're doing it well and we find it's moving well, then we feel the consumer is getting the best possible experience.
Yeah, I think the methodology for Service Corps is different too. Service Corps does a lot of mystery shopping, and they're constantly out chatting, experiencing on an ongoing daily basis, experiencing what people are offering on an ongoing basis. So I think that's what's different about Service Corps compared to a JD Power or Accenture. I can't remember the name. Accenture.
Accenture.
Accenture. Yeah. So I think what's different about them is, JD Power is a one-time report on an annual basis, whereas Service Corps goes out daily and does the mystery shopping daily and experiences these companies on a daily basis. Joel, I wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what's important when it comes to the financial advisor sector and that firm? What's important from a client experience? And on top of that, how important is the digital experience in financial advisory firms?
Yeah, and I think it goes along to what Glenn was saying is it's digital first. People are checking out your digital platforms, your websites, your social channels. They're seeing what kind of content you're providing them, what your messaging look like. Are you making it easy to do business with you as a firm? So do you have things on your website that enable the client to get the information they need? Are there resources that they can download to get a better feel for what it would be like working with you? And I think when I'm working with a client in a fractional marketing capacity, I do the same thing. I have a checklist of things that I go through on their website and make sure that it hits all these things. And it's like you said, Glenn, it's almost a binary. Can I do it? Yes or no? And from there, we can make recommendations just to, again, improve that customer journey to make it as easy as possible to do business with you. So I don't think there's a big difference between a financial advisor's website versus an institutional, bank or credit union,
Mhm.
or, I've also worked with insurance companies, and so they try to get that customer interaction as seamless as possible too, especially if you can create self-service policies where you can purchase everything online 100% without talking to a real human. So I've looked at that process flow as well to figure out what kinds of things can we do to optimize that experience. I've also looked at the client journey from the standpoint of conversion rate optimization. So if you're doing marketing or advertising campaigns and they land on your website, what does that process look like to get them to engage with whatever offer you're making? So again, I think it's very similar from financial advisors to institutional. It is digital first. I think that's how everybody's shopping right now. So as much as you can optimize that digital presence. But I also do the same thing. I think Glenn, what Surviscor does is I now go beyond the digital part of that customer journey, but I call in to the customer service center and see what happens when somebody answers the phone. How many prompts to take to get to a live human. So I think everything you're doing from an institutional standpoint resonates very well with the types of firms that I mainly help with.
Yeah, we really are a consulting company more than just a media company for sure.
Mhm.
And we've done work in that space in the past where you really trying to help a financial advisor because a lot of the financial advisors we dealt with a while ago, this goes back years now, but as they were given like, oh, you get a page on the RBC site, let's say, and then they had to kind of define the way they want it to work. But at the end of the day, you were really trying to help them understand that how could they manage thousands of clients virtually, right? Meaning, how could that client feel engaged with you on a daily basis? That could be as simple as having alerts, having different things, sending out newsletters, all these things that you can make people engage. But when these people want to talk to you, you can't oversell and underdeliver, right? And unfortunately, sometimes it's quantity versus quality. And it doesn't matter what the business is. It's the same no matter wherever you go. So let's get them in fast, but can you deliver everything is really important.
Yeah. So Glenn, tell us a little bit more about what are the biggest gaps you're seeing with financial firms today and how they think they're delivering the experiences for clients.
I got a little smirk on my face because I'm not sure how to answer that without yeah, maybe getting a few people feathers ruffled. But um the gaps are really internally. They're people they all have the ability to do all the same things. Okay, yes, does a small credit union that maybe not have the product that a bank does? That's possible, right? But variations thereof. And so their gaps are internal biases, really. I mean, in many ways, it's thinking that, oh yeah, well, no, we do everything great. We've got 40 people that work in this department, and we do our own research, and everything's great. But if you're consistently ranked by everybody that does any rankings outside of even the top 10, five even, how do you not say to yourselves, we may be missing something here? So those to me are the gaps. It's not so much what they're delivering because products change. It's the bias of resting on their laurels if they're at the top, or figuring, we're so far back, we'll never catch up. Like, again, maximize your niche is the best way of putting it. We're very hard on small firms because we don't feel like if you're going to be a niche firm like an EQ Bank, you better deliver at the highest because you're only delivering what, let's face it, we all know what's going on there. They're selling mortgages in the background, right? They want to have a bank. Every brokerage firm's gone that way too, the independents. Well, we better have a bank because we got to get money in. Manulife Bank is a perfect example of it, bridging these advisories like Joel would deal with banking, because how do you get money in from an advisor if you don't have some way of facilitating that? So yes, we can transfer money in, but you can control the environment better. But now you've taken what could be an amazing experience with a Manulife One product, having a mortgage system, etc., and you have this great advisor that you love, and then you get into the banking system and it's like, it becomes a bad experience. So now the advisors got pressure because now the whole experience has come down, because now we're building it out, building it out, building it out. But as we build it out, we're failing to realize that there's a whole experience here to keep in mind. So to me, the gaps come internally. They just, because they have to get out of their own way sometimes, I guess, is what I would say. But,
Yeah, you mentioned the importance of sticking to a niche, especially for the smaller firms, and the clients that and the founders that Joel and I typically work with are smaller. We've been advocating across the board that you have to niche down. You can't compete with the big players until you've really focused in, honed in, and built your revenue from your specific niche. So get to that ideal customer profile, get to that target audience, do your research on where your unique value is and where your white space in the market is in order to build your business effectively.
Yeah, I mean, we can put it all into our own businesses as well, right? It's as simple as, I have a great mentor. I won't mention his name, but a gentleman who's been around every little business around in financial services, and he always says, "Mate, there's no free lunch in life. You got to work for what you get." And he says, "But never build 7 products when you haven't performed and when you haven't perfected one."
Yeah.
And we all do it because as one doesn't perform at the levels, we try to pivot into something else. Right. And we're not forgetting about the first one. We're just now going, well, maybe we better throw 5 things at the wall and hope that 2 stick, instead of, if
Yeah.
we're really good at one, get really good at it and then move on to something else.
Yeah.
Easier said than
Yeah.
done. Easier said than
Or we move on too quickly. We don't spend enough time on the one thing that we should be doing and getting the right measurement and evolving it to be effective as we should be. So we tend to move on quickly, especially as founders, to try and chase the revenue.
Yeah, I've definitely been guilty of that running my own business. Those who can't do teach, I guess. And so that's something I always tell my clients is let's get really good at one thing and then let's layer something else on top. And then get really good at that and layer something else on top. And, marketing is a marathon. You have to have all these different channels working towards a common goal. So I certainly agree with everything you're saying, Mandy and Glenn.
Yeah,
Um,
I always equate it to, Mandy knows I spent a little time down south, and I used to love going, I know it's maybe not a politically correct thing to say. I used to love going to the little dog races, even though I'm glad they've got rid of it because it was not a very humane thing. But I used to equate it, at the days of sitting at a Jack Astor's in Toronto with writing on the table what you were going to do for business, like talking, going through meetings and making little notes and asking to take the paper to come home. And we used to put a track around, and that was the rabbit that they put a metal rabbit running around and the dogs would chase it. And we all do it. We chase the rabbit, right? Because we run into potentially a roadblock and then we start looking for the rabbit again. And then if we're focused on what we're doing, we don't look for the rabbit. We just go, right? We run. But
Yeah.
when we get trouble, we look for the rabbit again. And that's always been a internal little thing that we talk about. Let's stop chasing the rabbit and let's focus, right?
That's
I
right.
love that analogy. I mean, I hear that all the time with the presidents, founders of financial advising firms that I talk to. They're inundated by marketing by the next rabbit. You know, there's lots of marketing lead vendors out there trying to get them to sign up. You know, webinars the next best thing, or short
Uh-huh.
form YouTube videos, or we'll get you in these lead platforms. And they're getting inundated by this messaging. They're getting all these rabbits are running at them, and so they just keep chasing the ones that they think are best. And until they actually sit down and look at their marketing as a holistic strategy, I think they're going to just continue, like you said, chasing rabbits. Or the analogy I like to use is throwing spaghetti against the wall and just hoping something sticks. But the same thing, you're just running ragged, trying to figure out what's working and what's not. And to Mandy's point, you're not spending enough time to figure out if that's the right rabbit you should even be chasing. And if it is the right rabbit, then you want to make sure you're running at them full speed with one focus and not just
Yeah.
shifting from one rabbit to the next. So
Yeah.
lots of mixed analogies and metaphors going on here. But I think
So
we all are saying the
talking
same
about
thing.
talking about rabbits, we've gone down a rabbit hole.
Uh-huh.
So I'm going to pull us back out of the rabbit hole.
Thank you. Yeah.
So, Glenn, after 2 decades of evaluating the client experience, what are you seeing the same year over year? Like, what's the same old that you're seeing?
Again, I'm gonna be mean, but excuses. What do we see? It's always excuses. It's always we'll say, we see some great, and let's not always get to negative. I mean, there's some amazing things you see. You see people that are constantly trying to be better. They look at best practices from all the firms, and then they make very educated decisions, which best practices they like, which they don't. Which that's what people should be doing. That's what to me a digital experience team should be focusing on. What's somebody doing better, and acknowledging that maybe somebody does something better. And it doesn't mean you can replicate it, but you should at least know what you're working with when you do it. So when I say excuses, I just think there's a real propensity to say, we're really good at what we do and we really like our jobs and we're really going to focus here and we're going to not share information that we find from outside, because if I share too much from what comes from the outside, then possibly I'm not going to make my own group look good. But what happens there is that the consumer at the end always is the person that gets hit the most by those decisions. So yeah, I don't feel like the industry, there's so many great best practices that you can't fault the industries, because there's some firm doing it really well everywhere, be it one task or another task. Somebody's doing it really well. So when others aren't doing it well, that to me, that comes internally. That comes from a bias. That comes from, there's no reason why a small credit union outside of some money can't be as good as a big bank when it comes to delivering a TFSA to someone.
What I'm hearing then is that you aren't seeing a lot of change year over year, that you are seeing the same things year over year from a client experience perspective. You're not seeing the change in the client experience to elevate a company well.
Um, I would say overall we're not. As industry based, I would say if we took raw scores of what we, maybe to explain to Joel a little bit, like, so we produce a bunch of scores when we do this. So we'll have category scores, we'll have subcategory scores, we'll have criteria scores. And not that all those are important, but when we're benchmarking and we see a score, let's just say, for instance, we kept the weighting for at 20 points for a certain, let's go back to bill payment. We've kept it that for 20 years. It's around 20 to 25% of the weighting. When you don't see that top score get out of a 12 to 13, that just means they're shuffling, they're just shuffling the ball, the coconut under, the coconuts and the balls underneath it. So you're moving stuff around, but if really a firm took a look at all the best practices at each one of the firms around them, that score should be somewhere around 17, 18 on 20, meaning you could find a way of not overwhelming your client by having every little best feature and functionality that's out there and put it together And that's where I find a disappointment is that these scores, so some come in, scores don't typically go down too much. I mean, people don't rip stuff off the internet very well, unless, I pick on Scotiabank for that years ago. Scotiabank was the only example I've had in years where scores dropped 50% when they built a new digital system because they just took everything out because they weren't ready for the new system, but they had an internal blockage at the back end that they had to do what they had to do, but what a horrible experience for the end user. But at the end of the day, if these scores continue to be relatively flat with little ups and downs, now the firm may not stay like, let's say firm one is now firm four and firm four is now firm one. Now you got kudos to firm four and you have disappointment with firm one because it's like, so you're just because you're number one, that's it. Like that's all you can offer now. You're never going to look at different ways of doing things. That would be our biggest disappointment is it just new ways of doing things, right? Better.
Glenn, do you track Net Promoter Score as part of your process?
No, it's something we talk about a lot. To us, JD Power is a paid to play ranking. It's not taking anything away from JD Power and the research they do. It's just that there's so much emphasis put on that brand that people forget that, asking 100 clients Net Promoter Score kind of results is basis for changing all your business plans based on 100 respondents, which again can't be validated, but in some cases are given to them. Here's 200 people to go to, you should get some good responses here. But at the end of the day, when somebody's ranked number one, they may have been fourth in the rankings, but they didn't pay to play. So the fourth is now number one from a consumer point of view. And what gets lost in all that again is that firms get a real false sense that they're really good at something when they're maybe not. So the Net Promoter Score, I think it's something we need to start doing for sure. But I think, Joel, we're looking at a different way of doing it. I think it's got to be, if you look, and I've done a lot of research on that Net Promoter Score, most of these big consulting firms will say you don't need more than 300 respondents to represent a 96 to 98%, experience level that you can be confident index if you want as a confidence index. So I think what's wrong is that the question should be a little bit more consistent amongst the firms, and it should be based upon, one thing I think Net Promoter Score doesn't do for a firm is it tells you how your current clients are doing. It doesn't tell you what your clients that didn't come to you are doing. It doesn't tell you what they don't like about you. It only tells you what they like about your own experience. But Mandy hears this from me a lot, is that it's acquisition. It's the strategy to me, client experience to me right now is retention. They may speak that it's acquisition, but to me it's retention because there's too much noise out there. So you got to retain first. Simple comes into the fold and everybody panics. And are they really trying to acquire? Simple is a TD Bank, TD Easy Trade trying to acquire that client? No, they're trying to keep that client. They're trying to offer something similar to keep them, and sometimes that gets lost. Again, I would think progression means acquisition and retention, and if you're acquiring, you're probably retaining at the same time. In most cases,
I think the old adage is true that it's easier to retain a customer than it is to get a new one.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of choices. So don't be sad that you can't go out and get all these new ones, but don't lose what you have. That's, we all do that in our own businesses. You don't want to lose the people that are keeping the lights on, as they say. But there's so much choice. People are going to come and go. You just got to hope that let's call it the profitable ones are staying, and the come and goes, the tire kickers, as we call them, they come and go. They're going to come and go no matter what you offer them. Mandy knows I just recently made an internet change in the house. That was all about cost, but you learn in 1 week that, well, maybe the grass isn't greener somewhere else. But your first basis is about cost. So you go, okay, I'll make that change. And then you realized, that's not the same. But Canadians we'll learn. We'll just adjust. We're not very, we don't like jumping around to too many things. We're pretty confident in what we do, and we don't like change. So we're going to just put up with it. And our basic message to people is try different, that you don't have to get rid of what you have, just try others at the same time. Right?
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the digital experience and the importance of the digital experience, Glenn. How do you see AI reshaping the digital experience, and what do you think it's going to do next year in 2026?
I'm scared, excited and scared at the same time. I think we've talked about this before. We use it to bring a lot of data into, it's really awesome to have take a 4,000 word blog and say, could you help me write an intro of 100 words or something like that? You already kind of have a level of AI with the big banks, meaning they've always really focused on cross-selling based upon your profile, right? So they knew when you came in that you didn't have a mortgage, let's say at a bank. So you'd be getting a lot of mortgage ads and you'd be getting different things. You'd be opening an account. It already knew your profile. It knew what it could do. So now you've kind of gone into this hyperactive world now of who knows where it's going to stop. I get scared of investors just asking what stock to buy. I've tested it out just for fun in like a football pool, an NFL football pool. Tell me who to pick this week. It can tell you everything. It's going to just give you, and I'm sure based upon how you ask the question, you may get 17 different answers by the same. So what I worry about is we just rely on it so much that it becomes our only thing we think about. I think the firms are trying to learn, and I think that's great. I think you can't say no to innovation, but you're going to see changes in really the product lines. I think will be, you know, um, the products may be altered more than we know. Like, there's a TFSA may not be the traditional TFSA as AI comes in and plays with it a little bit. And I don't know what that looks like, but at the end of the day, we may lose track a little bit of what the base products are a little bit.
Do you see AI replacing that human interaction next year?
Next year, yeah. I look, I'm so not I'm even going to put virtual agent. That's not AI, but it kind of is.
Yeah.
Let's take their first take at virtual agents. I mean, what you get out of a virtual agent is a very sophisticated interactive FAQ. So if you haven't built the FAQ properly in the background, your virtual agent will, in essence, be horrible. The experience will be horrible. AI is no different. If we don't teach it, it's going to just use the internet. It's going to go down rabbit holes. It's going to be chasing that little rabbit around, like we talked about. And I think eventually your product is not going to be as good because it's just, you can't validate where things are coming from. And I think that's the risk here is that, you can go anywhere with this stuff. So it's here today. I mean, next year, it's just going to get different virtual agents, and that comes right out of a client's mouth. Yeah, we picked the wrong virtual agent. Well, did you, or did you not give it the right stuff? Right.
Right.
'Cause that's
Right.
really what it is. It's an FAQ, and
Yeah.
none of us ever get off and go, wow, what an awesome experience. It's a marketing tool. Sorry, because you're both marketers, but that came straight out of an executive at a big bank many years ago. We launched this because it's a marketing tool because now we can differentiate against someone else. We have this, but so
Yeah, I don't know if all AI is a marketing tool. I think that there are chatbots that go beyond that, but we could talk about that another day. Joel, it's interesting. Glenn mentioned advice, using AI for advice giving. How are financial advisors, and how is that stream of using a chatbot like ChatGPT or Claude for advice? How's that impacting the financial advisory world?
I think we're all worried about our jobs being taken by AI,
Yeah.
not only from marketing standpoint, but I hear a lot of anxiety around financial advisors that AI is going to be taking their jobs. But they also had that same worry when robo advisors came around. Do you remember that? Maybe
Yes.
like 5, 10 years ago, and that quickly went away.
Which is
So
a
I think
form of AI.
it was just definitely a form of AI. I think the concern with financial advisors is that the clients are going to get bad advice from AI tools or ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini, whoever. And when it inevitably fails, and then they have to go back to a real advisor and actually get quality advice that is able to look at all the different pieces of people's financial pictures that the person that was entering the question into these chat prompts and trying to figure out how to build a financial plan. I mean, the person, it's like you're saying, Glenn, you're only as good as the data you put in. So if any one of us would put it in our financial situation into ChatGPT, we'll be forgetting some things probably because we don't have a person who's an expert asking us the right questions to get to that end result. And there might be 8 other different things that the chat program's not even thinking about that a financial advisor who has 20, 30 years of experience knows to ask. So I think there's definitely some trepidation of, will chat GPT, AI, will that take financial advisors' jobs? I think it's just the unknown right now that people are worried about. It's probably going to take away some business from maybe just very basic financial plans and budgeting and that type of thing. But the advisors who are looking at very complex financial situations with multiple businesses and trusts and very significant tax questions, I think that complexity still needs to be handled by a human right now. And I don't think anybody wants to rely on an AI tool at this point, just knowing how in infancy that those systems are, to rely solely on that advice to then set them up for the next 20, 30 years or multi-generational estate planning um, advice. So again, I think it's just the unknown right now. And I don't think too many advisors are worried about it, but they're definitely thinking about it.
Yeah, and if I could add in, Mandy, I think the foundation of the advisor relationship and even a digital relationship is know your client. That's the foundation of
Right.
everything. That's the let's call it the how do we not get sued? We got to know our client. We have to know that our client risk profile. If we don't know that, and that's why it's required to be asked every year. And how's AI? If you forget to put that in AI, then you can be getting a profile that is totally different than what you may want.
Yeah. Yeah, you've both said it, right? AI is only as good as what you put into it, and you need that expertise to give it the right prompts in order to get the best value out of it.
And if I could add that, translate this into digital world of online investing, or let's call it, discount brokerage, DIY investing. That is what needs to translate. The
Hmm.
translation needs to be that we need to educate people on that side as well, not just give them a order entry screen like the Simples of the world try and get away with. You know, well, we gave them an order entry screen, we gave them access to do the stuff. Well, what else did you give them? Like, shouldn't your business be built upon, a DIY investing, teaching them how to invest, making sure that they don't go out there and destroy their future because they were able to go gamble and to know your client as long as they fill in those boxes. Is that system really stopping them from doing things? An advisor can stop you, and I'm not saying every advisor out there is the quality is as good as the next advisor, but there's some built-in things that are there for the consumer's protection. And I find some of these smaller firms that are coming, not small in size, just new, call it digital based, better for the young investor. They're actually doing it. They should really cater to real investors, not so much the new investor. The new investor should need to deal with someone who teaches them and tells them how it's going and allows them to learn. And the people that really should be using these order screens are the people who know what they're doing. Just, run in and do it and pay nothing. Perfect. You know,
Yeah. Yeah, that's great. One more question, and because I know we're pretty much out of time, but a question for you. You know, Joel and I talk a lot about trust building in our industry and making sure that we're building that our founders and that the companies that we work with are building trust with their clients. How do you see the client experience and trust coming together?
I think if we come back to, full circle to the first question, I mean, the trust comes from tasks. And, if I can perform my tasks, there's trust. Trust doesn't have to be, um, I think they're going to lose my money.
Yeah.
Really, the trust comes from confidence, and it comes from being able to do what I want to do. And when I have a problem, trusting that it can be resolved. Nobody's going to get mad that there's a problem if they trust that it can be resolved. And the problem could be as simple as I couldn't sign in today, couldn't get what I
Yeah.
wanted to see. But I think that's what has to happen. It's the trust factor comes from doing. And I think that firms that need to figure it out, they need to first identify where they're below average. And that should be the first step. Get to at least average, and then get to closing gaps between average and best practice. And trust will come.
Yeah, I think, you mentioned problems. Everybody's going to have a problem with any company that you deal with. You might come across a problem. Building trust to me as well is how quickly can you solve that problem? How do you get to problem resolution? And how do you keep the trust when a problem happens through the client experience?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's built step by step. That's why I was kind of making that gesture is
Yeah.
you deliver on the promise that you say you're going to do. And so if you get through the process and your company's not delivering on what you say you're going to do, then the trust is lost. So I think it's just, we're all humans. So I think it just takes time for us to build up that trust over time, and for you to consistently deliver on what you're promising, as whether from a digital standpoint or a personal standpoint. If you say what if you do what you say you're going to do, I think that trust just gets built, and it can be taken away. If there's some big data breach or anything like that, big, that could definitely be taken away. But just understanding that it takes time to build that trust.
Yeah.
Yeah, and every
Perfect.
experience and every challenge is different. So some are easy to build and the others are not. Um, so do the best you can in every situation, and that's it. That's all we expect from people.
So, is there anything you'd like to tell our audience about Service Corps in general, Glenn?
Trust. Yeah, trust that I think the biggest thing we always want the consumer to realize is that we don't have anything in the game. Nobody's paying to be in the rankings. No one's paying to be number one. We're trying to do all this legwork to help a consumer. Obviously, we make money off of the customers who are the clients or other firms. That's where we sell our data into. And that's, to be honest about that, that's how we keep going but the goal is for these firms to buy reports to get better. And in essence, if they get better, then we get better delivery, which is only going to increase our trust in everything we
Yeah.
do. And in none of our results are we saying that somebody is really bad. We're just saying that, you know, they're okay. They can do this, but don't want anybody ever feel panicked that they're dealing with somebody that, oh my gosh, we better get all our money out of here. Bottom line is there's better alternatives if you're willing to put some effort into changing.
Awesome. Thanks for your time, Glenn. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, guys. That was fun.